If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Saratoga Today for August 19th, 2023. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, with a man that you don't see on the screen with me very often, my co-host, Paul Halloran, for today. Paul, how you doing, my friend?
Well, hello, Kyle. Good morning.
Like I said, for those of you that don't know, there's been a little bit of changes to this sequence as we are covering the early Pick 5 at Saratoga this morning, as Paul Halloran, along with Howard and Pete on Thursday, covered the late Pick 5, including the Lake Placid and the Alabama Stakes. If you haven't checked that out yet, would highly recommend, as it was a very, very good show, and they had a lot of very strong opinions for those two races especially. But for those of you that don't know, there was a big change, or not necessarily a big change, I guess. Only one race was taken off the turf, but as I share my screen right now, from Naira about 3 hours ago at 6:43 in the morning, 2-6-11 have been taken off the turf today, and 3-7-10 remain on the turf, including the Lake Placid Stakes, which is race number 7, I believe. But so that will take off this maiden special weight for the 2-year-old maiden special weight for 136 off the turf. This will be run at a mile on the dirt out of the Wilson Chute now. So that would be something to keep in mind for your guys' handicapping this morning. But most of all, welcome in, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. You see Howard's email going on the bottom of the screen, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Please email him with any questions, comments, concerns, and then real quick, go through the peripherals, and then we'll go through a special show for those of you that don't know that's coming up actually right after this edition of Saratoga Today. But Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where you can find all of not only every episode of Saratoga Today, but every episode of Betting and Boozing on Wednesdays, every episode of the flagship show on Thursdays, and any other episode that goes up on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel gets uploaded audio only to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. The regular Power Picks, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. You get two full tracks every Saturday for only $4 a weekend, including full ABC grids, full top threes for all races, spot plays, price plays, anything you would need. And if you're not subscribing, you're definitely missing out, as these are very cheap and very profitable. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And the same goes for the new Saratoga only Power Picks. We had a rough start to the year with all the races being taken off the turf. Now, last week, I believe we had 8 separate winners for $50 or more. So you are definitely missing out now if you're not subscribed yet. And now is the time, as next weekend, you'll have them for everything on Travers Weekend. HHHRacingPodcast.com. And on the top of the screen, you'll see Power Picks tip sheet as a banner. Click that, and that'll take you right to the Power Picks. But Paul, I'm not going to waste any more time to get into the sequence. But right after this show, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a special podcast on Saturday morning covering Sunday at Woodbine, as Howard called it, an emergency podcast that we need to have, covering Sunday at Woodbine and the middle all stakes Pick 5, including the $1 million Kings Plate. It's Woodbine's featured day of the year. So if you're at all interested in that, which I would highly recommend, stay tuned after this show on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel, as the Woodbine show will be coming up at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. But Paul, like I said, we're not going to waste anyone's time. We're going to get right into the racing here. Race number 1 is a maiden special weight, 136,000 for 2-year-olds, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And as I bring it up here, the morning line favorite, I believe, is the number 3 Hunt Ball for Mott and Alvarado and Godolphin, which was actually, I guess, not a little bit surprising, as he does have a little bit of buzz with his works and stuff like that. But I definitely thought there would have been others being the morning line favorite, including the one you have on top, which is Risk It for Asmussen, Gaffleone, and a $500,000 purchase for Winchell.
Well, I think the buzz is how it comes from. Hunt Ball is a half to our good friend Cody's Wish.
That's correct.
So that'll get you that'll get you some buzz. I went with the Asmussen. You know, he was on with Steve Bick earlier this week, and Steve usually coaxes one horse out of him for the week. You know, the quote Steve Asmussen lock of the week. This is the horse he mentioned. You know, the gun runner with 2-year-old first time starters, 19%. Asmussen with 2-year-old first time starters in dirt sprints at Saratoga the last 5 years, 26%. So, you know, the rail is not ideal for a first timer unless he comes out running. If he doesn't come out running, so that would be the only hazard. But the horse has been working pretty well. B workout is last time out, and I don't think you're going to see 4-1 on this horse.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think you're going to see 3-1 on my top choice either. But this is the great part about these races, having them first, is this is a complete watch the board race, as you never know who's going to be taking that much money. But as Paul touched on, the number 3, he's a half to Cody's Wish out of the same dam. And Huntball gets into Mischief. So, you know, that's a pretty deadly combo, just as much as Cody's Wish being done by Curlin, although Paul would probably disagree with that statement, as, you know, the love for Curlin. But, I mean, Huntball, he's been working really well. He's got B's the last 2, I believe, of his workouts on the workout report that we got last night. So Huntball it makes a lot of sense. And if he carries any type of that Cody's Wish pedigree that Dance Card gave him, Huntball could definitely be interesting in this type of spot. Paul, you have the number 7, Special Element, in third. Technically the quote-unquote other Mott, as we like to say, Jose Lescano for Pin Oak Stud. Raced earlier, lost to a very nice horse in Pirate.
Yeah, I thought that was a key race, Cal. Pirate looked probably as good as any 2-year-old we've seen coming out of the maiden ranks. And then Just Steel came back to win. I think it was last weekend. It might have been earlier this week. They all run together, Kyle. But Just Steel did come back and win. You know, races like this, Kyle, I always like to try to identify whom I thought is the best of the horses who have run. You know, too many times you'll see almost all first-time starters, and then up pops a horse who has won a race. There is something to be said for the experience. I thought, based on that race, took some money, 8-1. I thought that he was clearly the choice among those who have run.
I mean, you know, like you said, losing behind Pirate, who looks one of the best 2-year-olds in the country right now, and then Just Steel came back to run an 88 buyer after his 60. I think I saw 68 last time. So massive improvements going all around from that key race. And I do agree with you, Paul, now that I'm looking at it a little bit further. But I went with the number 8, Gypsy Mischief, for Motion. Franco, he got a B workout the last time with that bullet going 48-2. Motion just looks to have Gypsy Mischief up and ready to go. And I like the outside draw for Gypsy Mischief to be able to get a clean run on the leaders. But your points about the number 7 Special Element are definitely taken. And if he starts taking a lot of money, maybe, you know, third, I believe he'll probably be third choice behind the top 2. But Special Element is definitely interesting in this type of spot. But real quick, I'm going to go over, before we move on to the next race, I'm going to go over a few chats. I see a lot of people. Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Greatly appreciate it. Mike Lawson is here. 11 is off. Yes, it is. Yep. You got that's a maiden 40, I believe, the last one, right? So yeah, that you figure that would be one of the first ones to go. Charles B is here. Thanks so much for the kind words, Charles. Greatly appreciate it. Just try to guess which horses were off the turf. And one of the horses that I liked originally on the turf stayed on the off the turf race and won going away. I believe that was the Clement horse, I believe, in the first race or the second race that we covered. But Peter Appleby is here. Welcome to day 2 of the Wilson Shoot Racing Festival. Not fully, Peter, not fully. We still got some turf races. All the inner turf races were taken off. All the melon turf races are good to go. But Jim Pilars is here. Good morning. See the A team on here. Absolutely, Jim. See, that's an astute viewer right there, Paul.
You're certainly right about that.
That's damn right. And then look who else is here. Christine Race. Thank you, Paul. Didn't get a chance to thank you. Been playing only letter picks and rusting. Did well with Prisoner yesterday. Thank you, sir.
Yes, we did have 2 out of 3 spot plays win yesterday for those SPP subscribers.
Heating up, Paul. Heating up. People got to get in now. This is the time. And then Mike Monroe says, "Good morning. Asmussen rumored to be a runner in the first today, as Paul touched on. Raymond Cromley's here. Jeffrey Wilson's here. Thank you guys so much. Racing Downwind is also here. Thank you guys all for joining the show. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. We have a pretty big audience this morning. But Paul, moving on, race number 2 was carded for the turf at a mile and a 16th. Now taken off the turf to be run in the Wilson Chute at a mile. It's 2-year-olds for 136,000 maiden special weight. And as I switch the picks right now, you see you have the number 2, Tom Collins, in first, who I have in third. But I mean, he's been working lights out on the dirt, so it doesn't look like he'll have any trouble taking to it.
Yeah, and this is where it gets difficult. You know, you're trying to guess. You know, I have a page full of notes here on, you know, turf pedigrees and first-time starter turf pedigrees and trainer with first-time starters on turf. So, and now that I'm looking at it, your 15, obviously, that you have in there has to be used. I kind of whiffed on him, but anyway, you know, I went back to looking at obviously dirt pedigrees, and I landed on the frosted. You know, Shug is not great with first-time starters. 2-year-old first-time starters, however, he is 14% the last 5 years. Actually, he is much better on dirt than turf in that category. Mm-hmm. It drops down to 9% on turf. So I'm assuming that this horse will stay in. This looks like the type of horse that they entered that could go either way. And I landed on him. I thought the other two were playable, though. I had in my note that the 3-horse didn't have much turf pedigree, so that he became one of my dirt picks.
Yep.
Classic Empire out of a Divine Park mare, and Bill Mott, first-time turf is like 5 for 83, so he's much better on dirt. But as I said, the 15, which you don't see in my top 3, is certainly a must-use as the only MTO.
Right, exactly, and that's, you know, I always talk about it on the on Betting and Boozing, but you know, these MTOs, they card, especially when a Chad gets into an MTO, they definitely take a lot of interest. And Pratt gets aboard for a Vino Rosso, who you don't see too many of Vino Rosso colts, but all of his colts and fillies have been running on the dirt, sprinting mainly. They're 4 for 30, led by the Wine Steward, who won at Belmont sprinting at 5 furlongs. But I think the 15, especially drawing the outside, and most likely will not be anywhere near the 15 hole when this goes off. I'm thinking with the scratches and stuff like that that'll come out of this race, which in the chat, if you see Andy Serling or anyone else post scratches, please let us know. We would greatly appreciate it, and we'll go back over the scratches that we have. But I think the 15 is a definite use. If he comes out of the 10 hole, I like the clear for these 2-year-olds. So Right to Vote is definitely someone that needs to be used. But I actually went with the number 6, Wally World, for Chad and Pratt, even though Chad thought he was definitely meant for turf. He worked really well in the dirt out of an Uncle Mo mare. Obviously Uncle Mo is has been a lot better on the dirt, more than ready. You can look, he's been just as good with his dirt as he is with his turf. So I'm very interested in the number 6, Wally World, who looks to get a pretty nice trip from the middle post positions in this spot. Was sold for $220, and it, like I said, has been working out pretty well in the morning. So hopefully Wally World can work out a decent trip. And then the last one you have, Paul, was Blast Furnace in second. I'm not the only thing, I had this horse in first originally, actually, going on the turf. I just didn't know if he was going to stay on or not when they took it off the turf.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, Marie DeVoe is first time when she takes over, she's 20%, and 0 for 3 on maiden turf races. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really, it's a guessing game. I mean, no reason with the factor not to. I will say that race that this colt comes out of at Gulfstream, that Royal Palm, sent 3 horses have come back to win so far, and No Name Mets would have been the prohibitive favorite in the Skidmore yesterday had it stayed on the turf. So that is kind of a key race, but no, I'm not sure what what
I mean,
Ms. DeVoe's thinking, but I suspect we'll find out shortly.
yep. And I mean, that's the fun of it, Paul. Is you always get
Fun
the
is one word, Kyle. I was going to think royal pain in the ass, which is more than one word. But let's see, that's 4 words.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They're very similar in meaning.
Yeah. And one I would definitely agree with more, considering the fact that, it's just a guessing game with these types of races, especially when we do these shows in the morning. You kind of just got to, handicap who you think's going to be on the turf. But, I mean, there's no info going around. You just got to hope and pray. Obviously, the only one that's for sure going to get in is most likely the 15 on the outside. Anyone other than that is a guessing game. But real quick, let's see. I'm going to go through some comments. Carlos, hello from Puerto Rico. Carlos, thanks so much for joining the show, my friend.
Buenos dias, Carlos.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Carlos, for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see. Mike Monroe, how about the 5 in the second race stretching out for Irad and McCarthy? Going out, or McCarthy, or from Trevor McCarthy. That was stupid in my opinion. I'm an idiot. But I mean, Sano actually has been 2 for 5 this meet. I like the second time out angle. He just hasn't been working well enough for me to consider him in a group like this. But we said off the turf races, anything can happen. So the number 5 is could definitely be interesting in this type of spot.
Keep in mind with Sano, you'll see in the form the last 2 years, he and Irad are 45%. That stays to 26% over 5 years. So it is of note in a maiden special at Saratoga, in which Chad Brown has won. Chad has a horse that Irad lands on Mr. Sano's horse.
Yeah, and I'm assuming a lot of those numbers probably come from his time down in Gulfstream. As we all know, Sano's a big Florida guy, so I'm assuming it comes from that winter meet. But I mean, 45% over the last year is nothing to be, it's nothing to shy away from. That's for sure. And then I'll bring up Howard's comment. We'll move on. Best name of the year is the number 6. Check out the name of the dam, then the horse. Absolutely. We always love a good National Lampoon's reference. And Forced Family Fun is the name of the dam, and Wally World, of course, most likely pertaining to the Griswolds. Absolutely great name. But we'll move on right now to race number 3, which is, as I try and get over there while my computer lags.
Breaking news, it's on the turf.
It is on the turf. That, as contrary to popular opinion, it is on the turf. And as I switch over the picks right now, you'll see we are both Paul and I are going with the number 1, My Sweet Affair, which I didn't think Paul was actually going to pick My Sweet Affair. As you all know, we don't see each other's picks until 15 minutes beforehand. But My Sweet Affair coming off the Galway, which was only 7 days ago at this point, Paul.
Yeah, and I kept it pretty simple here, Kyle. My Sweet Affair was my top pick in the Galway. And my logic, using some Jesuit logic, if I liked her in a stakes race a week ago, I'm going to play her in an allowance race today. She did not run particularly well. She was on the pace, had every chance, and really didn't finish. However, I do, this is a good allowance race, but I don't think top to bottom it's as good a race as that. It is interesting. Weaver over the last year has only tried this three times, has not won any of the times. I didn't go back. I should go back 5 years on that. But anyway, this horse should be forward. Was forward last time in the stakes. Figures to go from the inside. I mean, the 4s has a lot of speed. There is speed in the race. Obviously, it's a turf sprint. I get it. Don't think the 1 has to be on the lead. I'm looking at the Monmouth race 2 back, where she had closed the last 2. So I'm not, maybe they were that close last time just because of the post. Yep. She was the 10 horse in the 9 post. And you don't want to get caught too wide in these turf sprints, but I would look for a little bit of a different trip this time.
I actually really liked the fact that she didn't need the lead, Paul. At least that's the way I thought as well. Coming off a race where she didn't run particularly well, or at all for that matter. George Weaver wouldn't put her in the spot if he didn't think she wasn't ready. So My Sweet Affair I think she's going to get a really good, maybe like pocket type trip from the 2-hole, and a nice tip out of the top of the stretch in front of on the outside of the speed could work really well to this filly's favor. I just think she sits a really good trip in this spot. Paul, you have the number 4, Numero 6 in second, who looks to be one of the speeds. But I was actually very interested to hear why you went with Numero 6 instead of the number 6, the War Horse, on the outside.
Well, I thought that horses have come back to run well out of that Ellis race, including Playlist, who won right back. Joe Sharp is sharp, literally. He wins a 15% at Saratoga over the last 5 years, and when you filter that down to turf sprints, it goes up to 21%. Tyler has had an outstanding meet. He's winning at over 20%. He's at 21. And, I think the Wesley Wards are always going to be overbet a little bit in this type of scenario. So therefore, I'm going to try to get the 4 involved.
I love that type of logic, just because, Shoot Out the Lights, who's the number 6 for the Ward that I have in third. He looks to sit a decent trip from the outside, but he's one of many speeds in this type of race, both to his inside and to her outside. We're doing it, Paul, to me and you, as usual, but to her inside and to her outside, to where I don't think she sits a very good trip at all in this spot. She's not working necessarily sharp by any means, as we would normally see from a Wesley Ward. My guess is you will not get 3-1 on this type of filly. You'll most likely get 2-1. I just think there's many other different ways you can go, to create a little bit more value than going with the number 6, Shoot Out the Lights. But she definitely can win in a spot like this. Paul, I'll let you touch on Georgie Spirit, and we'll move on. You have her in third. I have her in second, coming off a nice stakes race, and obviously ran in the Miss Grillo last year.
Yeah, and I think obviously we talk about these turf sprints. They do in an odd way set up for closers to at least get a piece of it. And I think with Pratt, I think this horse will be coming. I wanted to make 2 notes, Kyle, before we go. Yep. On the George Weaver 1 to 7 day stat, if you go back 5 years, it goes from 0 for 3 to 2 for 8, which is 25%. So we like that. And in the interest of trying to keep our folks informed, I did reach out to our friend Junior Alvarado, I've dealt with a lot, obviously, through the Cody's Wish, just to get some general thoughts. And he says the 3 has a very colty attitude. So they're expecting a good race and a teaching experience for him. So whatever that's worth. But Mott doesn't typically have them cranked up. However, if you just go back the last few years, he's really been doing. I think he made a joke about it during this meet. He said he's learning how to train or something like that. So, that's the type of a horse. I don't want to go backwards. I know we have to get moving forward, but I did just get that, so I wanted to. I certainly can't get beat by him.
No, I know you can't. That's for sure.
Others might. But, so I'm encouraged about that Weaver stat, stretching it out to 5 years. And to your question on Georgie Spirit, I do think that she will be closing. And, Pratt is good on everything, Kyle. But, boy, he just has some turf rides that you just after the race say, "Wow!"
You just got to marvel at. Yep.
And he'll have a ride tonight you won't want to miss.
That is
over
true.
At Saratoga Harness in a charity match race on the harness track. Oh, don't I wish I were in town for that. Anyway,
that is true. Yeah, if those of you that don't know, Flavian actually, I don't know if he grew up driving harness or.
Yeah, his family. It was in his family.
There you go. Okay.
And they have tracks in France. I've heard him talk about it, Kyle, where it is not unusual to have harness and thoroughbred flat races on the same card.
Yeah.
So there.
Which, like I said, and then, be on the lookout for that at Saratoga Harness. They're going to be running. Flavian Pat's going to be driving a match race for charity today, as Paul just brought up. Think about last thing, Paul, and then we'll move on. Roth brings up in the chat, Weaver might scratch the 1, entered her just to make sure the race goes to the 1A. The 1A who we didn't talk about is Miss Domina, all the way on the outside, I believe, in the 9 gate. Do you have anything kind of covering that before we move on?
Yeah, that's a, again, we're into the guessing games here, and that's certainly an educated guess. In other words, he would have perhaps scratched the 1A. I don't know that My Sweet Affair would have stayed in if it were on dirt. So I'm not sure. Same owners, which is why they're coupled. That's a good question. But although let's just say this, Kyle. George Weaver is not making too many incorrect decisions at this meet.
That is very true, especially lately, considering he's 8 for 28, winning at almost a 30%.
Yeah, and which, good for him. And got taken down. Poor Coach Parcells.
Yeah, I know.
Got taken down in the stakes on Thursday.
Yeah.
So that would have been 9 wins for George.
So brutal. We won't get into that because we're going to
start. Howard and I covered it. We already covered it.
That sounds good to me. Paul, moving
on.
Go
back and watch the Thursday show if you want to talk about that.
And there's some good banter in there, so I would highly recommend going to watch it. Guys, moving on to race number 4, claiming $16,000 for 6 furlongs on the dirt. I went with the number 1, Ensign Parker. Paul's going with the number 5, Ragtime Blues for Peter Walder and Luis Saez. Paul, go ahead. Tell me why I'm wrong and why Ragtime Blues is going to win.
I'm not telling anyone while they're wrong. I don't have a real strong feeling in this race. I will tell you why I landed with the 5. Not that this is much. I like the cutbacks much better. 2 turns to 7 furlongs, but this horse is cutting back a furlong. And if you look at his last 2 races, he was forward and then really chucked it in. I just think this is the type of horse that Luis Saez tends to move up a little.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't tend to chuck it in quite so early. And look at Irad and Tyler. It's not about them. It's just, it's the type of horse. And, this horse is a claiming war horse. Has been claimed 5 times in the last, 8 months, 4 times in the last 8 months. So, has a back number earlier this year at Aqueduct. I'm not sure where it came from, Kyle, but a 94 buyer looks kind of like, he wins by a pole in this race. If he's able to run back to anything close to that. Walder's okay. No issues with Walder. Doesn't run many up there. He's 1 for 7. So, not in a race I didn't have a strong feeling. My angle is that Saez moves, drops a little bit, and Saez moves a horse like this up.
Yeah, and we always say, one thing I always talk about with Saez is he's a rider, 1, very aggressive, 2, he really keeps after his horses, which is why actually for Crown's Way, we really like to have him ride our horses because, it's not necessarily that other guys necessarily give up, but Saez is always going after the minor placings. So even if he, doesn't have the horse to win, he'll still try his hardest to get any type of placing he can. And for a horse like Ragtime Blues, who's been through the ringer many times, especially who wants to be a little bit closer to the front, I think Luis Saez is definitely the best jockey for this horse. And actually, Paul, Howard's agreeing with you. As he said, he bet Ragtime Blues heavily last time. Didn't break well, rest up from the inside. Nice pick to you. Look at that.
There is nothing. Let me tell you, folks, there is nothing in racing. Nothing. Some people say, what's the greatest thing in racing? Oh, an afternoon at Del Mar, being in the backyard at Saratoga. No. To be validated by Uncle Howard on a Saturday morning live on the air, folks. Okay? This is going to be a good day.
Absolutely. It's a great day to have a great day, Paul, is what we say around here. I went with the number 1, Ensign Parker, Ray Handel, Dylan Davis. First off the trainer switch. Last time out, I understand that he lost, or actually he ran beaten claimers last time out, but he's 3 for 34. But that last race where he did get a little bit of an easy trip, but from the rail, I'm hoping that he's not necessarily a horse that needs the lead, but will be close. I think if he runs back to that 78 last time out, he'll have a very strong chance to win a race like this, where there's not too much of competition otherwise. But I just, like I said, I get a nice price with Ray and Dylan, and hopefully he sits a good trip from the inside rail to tip out at the top of the stretch. But I also, Paul, did not have a very strong opinion in this race. As you can see, we have 6 different horses on the screen right now. But
I got more work is required on this race, I think, or maybe less work.
Well, yeah, one way or another, you can go many different ways. But you went the number 7, Poppy's Pride, in second. Gustavo Rodriguez, Jose Lescano. Just again, another hardcore claiming horse.
Yeah, these are 16 is almost not as low as it gets up there, but almost as low as it gets. And this is a horse who's on the board more than 50% of the time. Lescano is having a very good beat. Boy, he's that guy. He's not quite the Irad Pratt level, let's say. But boy, I'll tell you, honest effort every time. You could argue that on turf, he may be as good as any of them. And he's ridden this horse the last 2 times, and I certainly think he's going to be involved somewhere around the wire.
Yeah, and Poppy's Pride ran some really nice races at Gulfstream. That's where I remember this horse from last year when I was watching. Because for those of you that don't know, I was a very heavy Gulfstream player up until this show, honestly, and then I kind of we started bouncing around everywhere. But I loved Gulfstream, so Poppy's Pride was a very nice optional claiming runner last year at Gulfstream. Has been bounced around now in New York, obviously with all the different trainers between Gary Scotcha and William Thomas and Tom Morley, and now Gustavo Rodriguez. She definitely looks to be there, Poppy's Pride, but he hasn't shown that he's been able to stay these past few times, although he has been involved with some hot paces. So the 7's definitely interesting. I went the number 10, No More Talk, in second for Wayne Potts. Irad jumps aboard. This is another one that likes to be aggressive, but I don't think he needs the lead by any means. From the outside gate, if he runs back to any of those 82s or 83s he ran at Belmont, No More Talk could be extremely interesting. I think last time, he just was pretty wide and just didn't really get a pace at all to run into. So hopefully this race can set up for him, as there's a pretty decent amount of speed, at least in my opinion, in this race. And I went the number 6 in Sky We Trust in third. Another one that looks like has been aggressive in the past, but definitely I think benefits from a little bit of a stalking to closing trip. And if the pace does melt down, I was looking for anyone to pick up the pieces, and Skyway Trust with Carmouche aboard, I think could be the horse that just fits that bill to run about a mid-70s buyer and maybe pick up the pieces in this race.
And don't thumb your noses at the Parks lines. We've had a few Finger Lakes horses already win. Several guys ship up from Parks successfully. Butchie Reed, John Service, Scott Lake is one of the top guys down there.
Yep. Scott
Lake formerly trained on the Naira circuit for many years. So don't discount this horse just because he's from Parks. The only thing about your theory, Cal, it's just hard to envision a Kendrick horse running like that, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
It's going to be very difficult for him to sit and wait. He's as good as anyone is getting him involved early.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like I said, that's the thing, is this horse has been involved earlier in his career. So the fact that, maybe Scott Lake is going to say, we're going to try and get a little bit closer, and Kendrick's going to be like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. But you have the number 2, Handsome Cat, in third. And then just give your opinion. I mean, 82s for David Jacobson now gets a bug who actually we met. Olaf Hernandez Moreno is he's a super great kid. We talked with him for probably like 30 minutes on that tour with with Mig. But Handsome Cat, definitely interesting, especially with those past buyers at Aqueduct.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge class strub. It's just interesting. A California bred who has run in California and at Penn National, running here at Saratoga. So it's kind of an eclectic horse, and but that is it certainly is a big class drop. But Jacobson claimed this horse out of California, it looks like, back last fall. So David's has been kind of around. But That horse he lost to last time, Jake Rocks, is a pretty good horse. So we'll see. Mr. Hernandez Moreno has a win on the docket, so good for him.
All that talk I just did about no more talk, and I should have done the latter. Should have done no more talk, as he is scratched out of this race as well as the number 4 Winning Drive. As Mike Monroe just posted, Andy Serling has posted the scratches for this race, and actually out of the first race, the only scratch is the number 8 Gypsy Mischief, who I actually had in third. And then
that's significant.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the second race, the only one that's actually scratched due to the off turf is the number 4 Buffoon. So
I'm looking at Friday. How am I doing? This is what happens at the end of toward the end of the Saratoga.
It all blends together, Paul. I completely get it. So out of this race, well, I wasn't going to say that, Paul. Come on. But the fourth race, the only ones that are out of the number 4 Winning Drive, the number 10, no more talk. Paul, we're going to move on to race number 5 here. The scratches in this race are the number 4 Tivy and the number 6 Letty. Those two are out of this spot, and we actually have none of those horses anyway, so it doesn't matter. You are going with the number 3 Aberdeen I'm going to go with Aberdeen because it sounds cooler. But for Fletcher, Irad, 3 Diamonds.
And I did have the morning lines when I made these selections, which is not always the case. And I know it's an entry, but is the one entry really a 7-5 shot here? And if so, where do I get in line to try to bet against? The Fusquet Island has a triple-digit buyer 2 back. I mean, I'm not, I can read the form, but that's an optional claimer. It's actually this is a non-winners of 1x for 150 if you're a New York bred, 115 if you're just a regular inferior horse, 150 if you're a superior New York bred. Aren't you supposed to try to beat if that 7-5 is legit? Aren't you supposed to try to beat that? And I thought that this Pletcher horse took some money last time. He took a ton of money at Monmouth and did not run particularly well. Maybe that's why he drifted up to 5-2 last time. But wasn't really, Irad really didn't have to hustle him too much to get to the lead. By the time he got there, he kind of eased to the lead, and very professional performance. To $310,000 yearling. Pardon me, a $310,000 2-year-old at OBS last year. By Speightstown, Pletcher, Irad. I just think the disparity in 3-1 on this horse versus 7-5 on the entry. I want the higher end of that street.
You can see my picks. I completely agree with you in that regard, and I like Aberdeen as well. The last race is definitely an eye opener in a spot like this. I'm assuming the 7-5 comes from Dafuski Island would be my guess.
I would think so.
Coming from, that big race at Belmont, and then the second, the race coming back lost to a Cretive, who's a very nice Chad Brown Colt. But I went with the number 5 a la carte. I understand these horses' last few races. Even Mott tried him on the turf to see if he would take to anything. Didn't do it, but there's just a lot of really nice horses in the running lines for a la carte after those first 2 maiden wins that were very good at a maiden second and a maiden win at Gulfstream. Comes to Keeneland, runs 8 1/4 behind Bourbon Heist, who's a very nice horse. Tries him on the turf, does not work out whatsoever. And then now it's Saratoga going 6, loses to a Cretive, just not really firing. But since that race, he's worked another bullet in 46-4 and 48-3. Both, I believe, are B to B plus workouts on the sheet. I'm very interested in a la carte. If Junior can be a little more aggressive like he was in those Gulfstream races, I believe that a la carte at 8-1 could get up and at least hang on for a piece in the money, if not on top. Just this is one of those horses that you're playing back numbers, and I'm just hoping for a really good trip.
But you know what? I'm looking at it, Kyle, and I have no idea if they are accurate. But boy, at face value, don't those two Gulfstream numbers look a little high
They
based
do.
on
Yeah,
what's happened since then?
you're right.
And again, I'm not the guy who figures them out, so I have no reason. And I know that the buyer people go back and look and adjust. So, but I'm just saying that's to go from 96. Interesting. This horse was a 5-year-old maiden.
Yep,
Kyle.
that is correct.
So it took a while to get this horse going, but probably no one is good or better than Mr. Mott in that type of scenario as far as being patient. You get Mott, you get Junior.
Yep.
I'm just happy to hear it wasn't a hunch play for you, Kyle, based on the name.
No, yeah.
I didn't think it was because you're not really an a la carte guy. You're more of a buffet guy.
Absolutely, I would. That I'm a go up 4 times type of guy.
Correct.
As compared to the a la carte.
You're more
option,
an a la plate guy.
which which you'll see. Actually next September, if you decide to come to the.
Oh, you kidding me?
To the celebration.
Absolutely.
I know you'll be there. There's no doubt in my mind that you'll be there. But Paul, real quick before we end the show, I want to go over at least a little bit for those involved about the last few stakes races.
Sure.
Race number 7 is the Lake Placid Stakes. I'll bring up the PPs. Unfortunately, we don't have picks, obviously. If you want full in-depth analysis, please go watch Thursday night's show with Pete, Howard, and of course, Paul Halloran on the screen. They went over the late pick 5 for today.
Just for the record, our friend Pete was out playing with Dumbo.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Disney,
you're right.
We love Pete, but let's not give him credit. He was out schmoozing with Goofy, and Howard and I were doing the grunt work.
That's right. It's Pete. It's Howard and Paul. Excuse me. I forgot that Pete wasn't there. That's called habit, Paul. That's what that is.
Yes,
that's called habit. But the Lake Placid Stakes morning line favorite is the number 7 Surge Capacity at 3-1. I mean, looks to be that type of race where it's very competitive, very lukewarm favorites, and there's many different ways you can go in that spot. Yeah,
we talked about this. 4 Chads in the race. I went with all 4, 2 A's and 2 B's. I landed on tax implications. The one thing I would say is Surge Capacity, who I believe is the morning line favorite. Yes, the 7.
No, the 7 Surge Capacity is 3-1.
Yeah, the 7's the morning line favorite. He really, here we go again. She really did. She got a dream trip up the rail, up the hedge last time, if you will. So I wanted to go a little bit different. Chad is high on a spray on the cutting back from 1.25 miles. Should be running late. If you're playing a caveman and you can't go 4 deep, you gotta, it really is like walking in a minefield, figuratively. You just gotta, that there's a chance you're going to get beat by a good horse, but those are the decisions you have to make.
Yep, you got to decide which Chad to use and which Chad to throw out. Obviously a spray beating horses like Breath Away, and then obviously was in the race last time at the Belmont Oaks at 1.25 miles with horses like Aspen Grove. Prerequisite was also in this spot, and Papilio. There's just many different ways you can go in this spot, and I mean prerequisite on the outside is going to be the speed of the speed. Looks like Surge Capacity had a nice run up the rail last time. Tax Implications was another one in that spot who got a really nice run. And obviously a spray, as you touched on. Many different ways you can go in that spot as well. And then real quickly before we end the show, the Alabama Stakes, of course, the feature on today's card. Grade 1, $600,000 for 3-year-old fillies going 1.25 miles. Of course, the morning line favorite is the number 2, Wet Paint, coming off the win in the Coaching Club Oaks last time late in July. Paul, I haven't gotten to watch the show yet, so I actually don't know who you went with in this spot, but please expound on your picks.
I am all in on Wet Paint, and the more I listen, I think I'm not in the majority. It seems like there's people are making cases to beat Wet Paint, and I get it. This is a good race. Well, it's always a good race. It's one of the premier races for 3-year-old fillies every year. And you could make a case for virtually all of them, and probably you could. I could make a case for Sabre Tough at 30-1 because it's Dallas Stewart, and he's tremendous with long shots. Chocolate Gelato appears to be a horse who's going to go for Todd.
Yep.
Maybe or maybe not in the interest of setting it up for Gambling Girl, but she'll also be setting it up for Wet Paint.
That's very true.
I believe the two best 3-year-old fillies in the country of Wet Paint and Pretty Mischievous. We saw Pretty Mischievous win the test under very unfortunate circumstances.
Right.
She'll go back out to a route of ground, and I think you'll see them both in the distaff. I just think at this distance, adding an eighth of a mile, Wet Paint is a bit of a grinder, so she is susceptible to not a really fast pace. Had no chance in the Oaks because of that. Was last. Was toward the back of the pack rather, and just you weren't closing from that far back. Closed at Ellis at a time when no one was closing at Ellis. And last time she grinded down the one, Sacred Wish, who's right back here. So very competitive race, but I am all in on Wet Paint.
I am also all in on Wet Paint, Paul. That you see, yours of validation is Uncle Howard. When you validate me, Paul, that's where I am. That's where I love it.
Don't get carried away.
But the last thing I want to touch on real quick, obviously number 8 randomized. 2 very big numbers, both in the Wilton and the Maiden Breaker at Aqueduct. Looks to be the speed in that spot. Taxed is another one, obviously. Your Black Eyed Susan winner by 3 3/4 is another one that looks to be there at the end. But last thing, Paul, and then we'll move on, or then we'll end the show. There's a lot of love in the chat, I can assume, as you can probably assume, for Julia Shining, who obviously third in the Ashland, won the Demoiselle, has been working really well. But I mean, she doesn't have to improve too much, but this is probably, in my opinion at least, this is probably the best grade 1 that we've seen at Saratoga so far this year.
Well, as Howard and I talked about the other night, that this race has similarities to the Kentucky Derby, in which every horse goes in not having run a mile and a quarter.
Yep.
Now you have fillies who've never run a mile and a quarter and may not ever run it again unless they come back next year in the personal ensign, right?
Yep.
But I will say this. Curlin out of an AP Indy mare named Dreaming of Julia. So I'm going to go out on a tiny limb and say the distance is not going to get this horse beat. Yep. And if you want, for those of you Julia Shining fans, Todd Pletcher, 60 to 180 days in dirt stake races, 31%. So,
pretty good numbers, I would say.
So I have her as a B. I have a few questions that are not going to get beat. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think randomized is very dangerous, although I do have her as a B. I have Wet Paint as a lone A here. It might be a over-aggressive stand, but, you got to make stands.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to be aggressive somewhere, Paul. And trust me, with Wet Paint, I agree with you that that's a great place to do it. But guys, we're going to end the show here, Saratoga Today. But stay on the HHH Racing Podcast channel. Yep, we're back on in 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Where's my Woodbine PPs? Where's my Woodbine PPs? Jesus, this guy is a slave driver.
Got to figure out where my Woodbine stuff is. But in 10 minutes, we will be covering the Woodbine King's Plate stakes and that middle pick 5, which is all stakes. It's a very nice sequence, as we said it at the beginning of the show. It's Woodbine's best day of the year, so stick around for that. But guys, good luck today at Saratoga. Crush your bets, and with everything with the Lake Placid and Alabama stakes, it's shaping up for a great day of racing. For Paul Halloran and of course myself, Kyle Roscoe, crush your bets today at Saratoga. Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.